If I go abroad right now and people would ask me, where are you from? I think the best answer would be, it's complicated. I'm not Russian enough for Russian people, but not ethnic enough for my indigenous people. I was born in a small town in Bashkortostan Republic, a republic very unique and culturally rich. It's also important to mention that Bashkortostan is not just another part of Russia, it's actually a very separate region with their own traditions, even holidays, even religion is different there. It's one of the most independent regions of Russia, and my ancestors were nomads who lived mostly in villages and they didn't speak Russian at all. So recently I had a birthday and my mom called me to say happy birthday, and we have this tradition to say long, big wishes, and she wanted to emphasize how far I've come, how much I have achieved. You are the first in our family who did that, who did this, etc. She was very proud of me, and of course the point was very positive, but the more she talked, the more I realized how different I am from my original people, how different I am from people around me. That kind of the root cause of my mental battles and mental problems. I'm the first generation in my family who live an urban lifestyle. I was born and have lived only in cities for my whole life. Most of my family still live in rural areas or villages. Bashkir people, they observe and honor traditions. For the most part, they are quite conservative. Most Bashkirs speak Russian nowadays, but with a quite pronounced accent. In my case, Russian was my first language because I spoke Russian with my family, with my mom. I spoke Bashkir language only with my grandma, or when I visited my village during summer vacation, or in native language lessons at school. When I was in elementary school, I was the only Bashkir in my class, and I was very different from everyone else in appearance. My skin, hair, eyes were darker than the others, and my name is also unusual for Russians. And I was also smart and studied for excellent, which of course pissed off the others. But that's another story. So, as it always happens with minorities, speaking ethnic language and everything related to that is considered not cool. And of course, the more you are different from the others, the more you get bullied. So I was called all kind of names, like nigga, black, chink, Asian. And of course now it seems so strange because when you live abroad you understand that you are not that dark. Actually, your skin is absolutely not dark. But when you live in Russia and everyone is so white and they have very light eyes, very light hair. So then we moved to another part of city and I had to go to a different school, and there were 5 more Bashkir people in that class. And I was thinking like, wow, probably now it will be better because at least ethnically I can relate to someone now. But it didn't happen. So they all spoke very good Bashkir language, and that's not actually the problem. They mostly had this kind of traditional outlook on life, and it relates to different things, from the way you treat your parents, elderly people, how religious you are, what you are interested in. I just felt with the gap between us, so we were not really compatible in a lot of things. So yeah, I didn't really felt that connection that I hoped for. I remember also one girl, Russian girl in my class, complimented me saying something like, wow, you have such a good Russian. How did you master it so well? You know, that sounded so crazy. Easy. It was just my first language. It was my native language. And at the same time, my relatives, especially my grandma, liked jokingly and kind of disparagingly call me Russian, because for them I was also different. I had different views, I didn't follow traditions, I was not religious, and I was not fluent enough in Bashkir language. And I don't happen to look like a typical member of my nation either, because I am taller than typical Bashkir girl and even a guy. I'm taller than most of the Bashkir man, and I'm taller than my dad, and I have bigger and wider eyes. And then after I finished school, I went to St. Petersburg to study there, and people there always wondered about my name and my origin, because the name is not typical for them. And a lot of time I was asked if that's a real name, if that's a full name, or it's a short name, or it's like a nickname, and where I was from. And not everyone knows that Bashkortostan is part of Russia, so I had to explain that as well. I lived there for 5 years, and when I went home for some vacation, I also, of course, didn't feel like home in my hometown, but St. Petersburg didn't feel like home for me too. But then something even more interesting happened. After living in St. Petersburg for 5 years, I moved to China, and I lived there for half a year. Actually, I plan to live there more. It's like a completely different story. If you're interested about my experience living in China, please drop your comment below, ask your questions, and I will be happy to share. Because of the COVID, I couldn't return to China, and I had to live in Russia again, and I felt like I definitely didn't belong there. For them, I was different. For me, it was not home. I didn't feel like I belonged there anymore. And then I moved to Moscow, and I lived there for a few years. And then after the war started, I had to move abroad. And the first place I moved was Uzbekistan. I lived there for a while. And then 2 years ago, I moved to Portugal, and now I have residency here. It's my home. The thing is, if I go abroad right now, and people would ask me, where are you from? So I think the best answer would be, it's complicated. Yeah. For my whole life, I wasn't Russian in Russia. But then when I moved abroad, and especially now when it's not really great to be called Russian, I have to call myself Russian, which is unfair. I recently learned the term third culture kids, and it was such a relief to know that there is a word that can describe your experiences and your feelings. And maybe some of you can relate to that too, to that feeling that you don't belong to any specific country or culture. So this is my story. Share your story in the comments. I will read them all for sure. Subscribe to my channel. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video. Bye!